Hi there, Thomas. Hey, Thomas, can you hear me okay? I'll leave that down until...
And who did you say is joining remotely for planning commission?
Lindsay and Lisa, for sure.
Hello, Matt.
Hello.
How are you?
All right. Good to see you. Good to see your name in big letters.
Who all have you got with you there?
Jim is here in person as the only planning commissioner. There are 4 members of the public. And I heard from Lindsay and Lisa, at least expecting to tune in
Remotely,
online.
I saw.
I'm not sure about Shannon and Josh.
Okay.
Good.
Oh, there's Shannon right now.
Okay. So I've got some paper documents with me, Thomas, and I'll try to focus on markup with those. If you can keep a run of the basic minutes.
Absolutely. Did you? I mean, we don't really have much in the way of an agenda here. Anything other than traffic?
We should have an agenda. I didn't print it out, but I emailed it. Did you? Yes. Okay. Sure.
I think I sent it within a day or two of our last planning.
Oh, no, that's right. I remember that. And I put that in proper format. I have no idea. Look at me, past self, doing the work. Want me to run a few of these off?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Matt, could you email that to me as well? I'm not finding it in my inbox.
Yes, that makes, I know that makes life easier for you.
Thank you very much. Oh, no, I just found it. Never mind.
You know, prep work we did 2 weeks ago feels like a long time.
That's right.
Well, I'll give this mic over to Jim and he'll take it away. What do you think? We're talking today.
Yeah. So we're still expecting, who are we missing? Lisa. So we're expecting Lisa, right?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Can't remember if Josh told me he was traveling.
yeah, he's not going to be here. So,
Yeah, Lisa did say she's not. He's got some family visiting.
okay. Yeah. So she could probably come and go. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes. Thank you for being here, everyone online. For this kind of meeting, do we need a quorum? I'm not sure that we need that.
It was advertised as a meeting.
Okay, so we do need
You
that.
can't do any business without the quorum. If you're here without a quorum, you can still act, but you can't do anything.
Which I don't think
People do.
Not any. So to just talk about things.
right. Okay.
The
Because I'm not going to count on Lisa to be here on time. So let's get started.
okay.
Hey guys, how many people do you need for a quorum?
You have 3 out of 5. That's actually good.
Oh, we do have.
What's that?
Right. Okay, never mind. I was not thinking about that. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna. Are you printing out those agendas? I need them for my own reference. One of the things that we wanted to do initially was come up with a semi-permanent body for this purpose, which I expect may fluctuate a little bit, but I do want to have understanding of who is going to be kind of actively participating on a regular basis. And so we're going to need to figure that out. Was one of the first items. Thank you.
Only because I can't see, are there other people in attendance in person?
Yes, so we have 4 people here.
Okay.
Matt Holt, Susan Cable, and Bill Heisen. And Jeffrey, go ahead.
No, I'm here.
Peter, sorry. It's hard with all the masks. I don't really get a chance to see what people's faces look like. So we have 4 people here.
Cool.
So I know that Bill and Susan, and I believe Peter, you all 3 are interested in being permanent members of this special committee for the duration. Is that accurate?
That's the format.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sort of flying by the seat of my pants. This is not my area of expertise, so Matt's going to stop me when I say something that's not in keeping with parliamentary procedure. And then, Lindsay, are you anticipating participating on a regular basis on this? I think it goes without saying that any of the planning commission are going to be, even if they're only here sporadically, they're going to be official committee members. Who else do we have here?
Shannon.
Hi,
Hi, Shannon.
how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Chris Wade. Chris, are you just sort of listening in, or what's your involvement in what's your anticipated involvement?
Yeah, listening in sounds like a good description.
All right. Matt, did you have any interest in participating long term? Okay. So I think we have the 4 that are here present, and the 2 that are looking to do that are on the call that will be part of it will be Shannon and Lindsay. So we have 2 plus 5, so we have 7 members. So Matt, can we just make a note that aside from Planning Commission, that the 4 present here are going to be permanent members? And I'd like to have Karen also be listed as a permanent member, even though she's not here. So we're going to try to accommodate her schedule.
Tuesdays are bad.
Right. So we're going to have to choose a different day to do this, which is fine, I think. So that's the first round. We're going to do selection of a chair. I think the chair's role is going to be primarily administrative, because we're not really taking any hard actions here. We're not voting on anything. We're just making recommendations for revision for the small area plan. But I would like to have a chair so that we can sort of use that to keep the format straight. So of the 7 members here, does anyone want to nominate a chair? Well, I'm happy to do it. But I can't nominate myself. So. Well, maybe we could have a vice chair. I think that makes more sense. Okay. But let's do a vote. All in favor of that?
What are we voting on? What are we nominating?
So we're nominating for a chair for the special committee.
Okay, gotcha.
And Matt, you tell me how this process works. I know in a formal meeting we need to go through a certain procedure. Do we need to do this here?
I kind of like the Quaker arrangement of the sense of the meeting. Are there any strongly held objections?
Okay. So we have a nomination for me as chair. Does anyone want to nominate someone else, or are there any objections? Okay. Okay. So I think that's settled, and Bill nominated Susan as the vice chair. Does anyone want to nominate another vice chair? Okay. In the absence of any. So for the purposes of this meeting, I don't think that's because we're not making any executive decisions here. I don't think it's I don't think that's something we have to worry too much about, but you're welcome to nominate Bill and we can vote accordingly. But I think it's simpler if we just keep it as is. Bill seems to prefer to have you as the vice chair, so I think that maybe he would. Let's not get too crazy. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I think the consensus is that Susan is a good match for the vice chair. So I think we can move on from that. So we have public discussion. The only member of the public that's not going to be a permanent member of the committee is Chris. Mr. Wade, do you have? Would you like to weigh in on anything before we get started on the rest of the agenda?
No, thank you.
So we'll conclude the public discussion portion. That was easy. General review of the West Downtown Small Area Plan. I don't necessarily think it's, we need to strictly follow 5 and 6 in any specific order. I think there's going to be a little deviation, but the general purpose of the meeting is decided at the last Planning Commission meeting was to discuss traffic, specifically as it relates to the small area plan. And so let's kind of weigh into that first, and then if we get into any general topics, we'll try to limit the amount of general topic discussion, unless it ties in directly with the traffic portion of that. Matt, I know you had something specific that you wanted to address, and maybe in the interest of not waiting till the end and losing an opportunity, do you want to weigh in on that, and then we'll consider the general portion.
I came here to see what you guys said before we were, right? So I kind of thought maybe I'd find out from you guys before I went further on that.
Do you want to wait then?
Yeah, I think I might be asking questions that you guys have already hashed out, so there's no reason to go down that, but I will definitely interject.
Specifically about traffic. I don't think that's what you were.
It's part of it.
It is, okay.
But
So
we
you
can
feel like you want to bring that
Yeah,
up?
I'll interject.
In terms of format, we're at the mercy of about an 8-foot wire on this. So I centered the podium, and I know it feels a little weird to step into the circle, but that's all I can do with this technology. Bill, it won't pick up your voice from where you're sitting now. Yeah.
So can I just ask a process question?
Yes.
The group is chartered. Are we chartered to just talk about traffic, or are we? What is the deliverable that we want from the group? When we met last time, I think we made observations to the planning. I wasn't sure what happened after that in terms of the town council or the planning interest in further input about it. You should set that stage about what do you want?
So I think what the Planning Commission specifically wanted to see in this meeting for the format was to identify one topic, use that as the primary objective of the meeting. But beyond that, I don't think Planning Commission had any specific requirements as far as how we format the meetings is what we do. So I think based on our previous conversation, what we want to see is actionable recommendations on the small area plan. And so with the understanding that we're going to try to focus on one piece of that at a time in each meeting as we go forward. So basically what we're doing is we're making recommendations to Matt, who's going to make notes of these. He's going to make modifications, he's going to present them for review, and then we're going to continue on through that process. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, I know another before we get concerned about the amount of time to do this.
Sure.
What is the context of the time and the number of topics that we have the ability to talk about?
Okay, so just for those of you, can you guys hear it okay, or do you want me to repeat the question?
If you could repeat them, that would be great, Jim.
Sure. So the question was, we have, as it stands right now, Town Council has requested that we present a completed small area plan for their approval and adoption. I think we're anticipating them voting on that in November. Is that correct? As it stands, that's what they're asking us to do. Stuart, thanks for joining. We don't know how long this process is going to take and how much progress is going to be made. We had some discussion at the town council meeting last night in regards to what would be an acceptable course of action if we start to make progress but aren't quite ready to present it by that point. As it stands, nothing has changed. Town council has not approved any additional time. From my understanding, planning commission does not have to strictly adhere to what town council has requested, but my preference is to take any changes that we make that deviate from what town council has requested. I'd like to do so with their blessing, so to speak. So if it looks like we're going to need more time, my plan is to go to town council and ask them for additional time. But as it stands, we have until November, well, really October, so the planning commission needs to approve it before it goes to town council. So we do have some time constraints as it stands. If it looks like we need some more time, my plan is to talk to the town council and ask for more time. I anticipate some pushback on that, but that's the nature of things, and we'll just have to see how it goes. All right. Any other format questions or general questions before we get going? Okay. Cool. Yeah.
I just have just one more topic. Do you want at some point to set out a schedule as to what we're going to address when?
So
that we can have time to invite
yes.
outside experts if possible.
That's a great question. So the question is, do we want to set up a list of topics that we want to discuss in future meetings so that we have an opportunity to request the presence of experts who would be able to assist us with those topics? I believe I saw a list of proposed topics. Yeah, so
We did have, last time we went over about 5 or 6 topics, so we might have to either put them together or abbreviate them or eliminate them or something.
You want to make that?
Yeah.
What we're talking about?
Because
Just the draft?
Yeah, and you can speak to the touch-ups that we did on that. Or does your document reflect that?
So, yeah, go ahead. So, and just for clarification purposes, my goal is to run this in sort of a roundtable fashion. So we're not going to really stand on formalities. So if somebody wants to speak up, as long as we're not stepping on each other too much, if we want to kind of conversate, I'd like this to be kind of a conversational process. I think that's going to be helpful for moving things along.
Just a draft.
Okay, great.
Does this reflect the markup that you and I did?
Yes.
Matt, would you be able to somehow maybe take a picture of this and just upload it into chat so the folks that are remote can see this list for their reference?
Yes. I can do that.
Okay, so and I'm happy to. We'll come back around to some administrative things as far as how the format's going to work, but I want to dive into the traffic piece. So I'll just kind of summarize some of the concerns, and then whoever feels the spirit move, then can jump in and start the discussion. So obviously, whatever development goes into the small area plan is going to increase traffic since there's no traffic there now, right? There's a few trucks coming and going to Dr. Burke, dropping off things. There's a shop down there that's getting some use, but beyond that, it's basically no traffic. I know that the number of units that are down there come with certain constraints, meaning you would need to have additional access if you put more than a certain number of units. I think it's 50 right now per how many acres are back there, based on the number of acres are back there, so there's some additional constraints there. And some of the discussion in our first sort of informal meeting that we had, some of the folks mentioned that their concern was that when the tire plant was there was a lot of traffic, and it really hindered the healthy nature of the neighborhood, and that they're concerned about whether it's construction during the development phase or business traffic or residential traffic, that whatever goes in there in the short term and potentially long term would have negative impacts on the existing neighborhood. So our goal is to look at this in a way that tries to discover a system that's conducive to growth back there, but that's not in keeping with the current neighborhood and what's best for the town. So, and I'll let whoever wants to jump in first. Jump in.
Traffic or
About traffic. We were on traffic.
Oh, I thought we mentioned push, were any of those answers sent out?
Which way? I've gotten a lot of emails, so you have to be specific. I don't
There
know.
were some specific questions that were laid out, I think,
Okay. Bill, I have,
but being on track earlier, I guess.
do you have a copy of those?
I do.
Does that look like it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Why don't I give you this? Who drafted these?
Then we can just go through those and don't get answers, we can send them to them.
Guys, Bill's not being picked up by the microphone, and the crosstalk is a little hard to decipher.
Nothing going to be consequential of the fact that Bill's going to review some questions that he had drafted before, so that's. Oh, who's sorry, who drafted? Okay, so there's some questions that have been compiled that Bill's going to review. You're going to come up with it. Yeah, I mean, you brought it up, so it's your opportunity to.
We just make a suggestion, it's only 4 of us, we just move up. Right?
As close as you feel comfortable.
Is that okay with you guys? We just move up and then we don't have to keep answering back and forth and all that.
That's entirely up to you.
Can you hear me now?
Do you want to move in a little bit as well? Or?
So I'm going to put your questions down.
Oh, okay.
On the screen here, so
Well, makes it a lot easier. That's not,
I have.
it's on a third page, I think.
Bill, I have a slide deck that I hope answers all of those questions.
Great.
So it's up to you how you want to format this. But
Well, let's just go through them like we have.
I hope I have information.
Okay, if not, we're good. All right. The first one is, what are Albemarle County's requirements, thresholds for provision of safe and convenient access for similar mixed-use developments? Number of access points. That's it.
Would you like me to talk about that now?
Yeah.
Okay, can we just sort of like maybe all the whole question is, well, I don't think we need to minimize that, maybe if we can just sort of take the window of the Word document and just pull it over or whatever.
Can you do that? I don't know if you could do that. There you go.
Okay. The person who can help me explain that is Kevin McDermott. Kevin is the transportation planner for Albemarle County. He walked me through the county's development process and regulations. He's familiar with the site here and knows the town well. He's been with the county for a long time. He's their senior transportation planner. And he talked to me about what the county's approach would be on a project like this if it were located somewhere else and entirely within their control. He and I also talked about what the county's role in this project would be. There's certain authority that we in the town government have on our own, but also certain things that the county's going to do regardless whether or not a project is in the town or not. So he gave me that advice and showed me what I'll share with you this evening. He was reluctant to come and present all of this himself because he's very much mid-level staff in the county, and it's not really his role to give policy advice to a group like this. And he was uncomfortable giving analysis or making a prediction about something that's still really very early steps. And that was also the kind of response that I got from my VDOT technical colleagues at the Charlottesville office. They work better when they have a specific proposal in front of them. So they point me to the rule book and say, this is the framework we're going to apply when something comes in front of us. But they don't really want to give guidance real far in advance that might prejudge something. Does that make sense? Okay.
So is the answer we don't know?
So I'll show you what I have. Okay. Because the question is, what are the county's regulations? what do they have on the books that affects a situation like this.
Can you just read that question one more time, Matt? So we go into
Yep. So what are Albemarle County's requirements and thresholds for provision of safe and convenient access for similar mixed-use developments, i.e. number of access points?
I think it's worth noting that we don't have a clear understanding of what. So there's a number of scenarios, I guess, is what I'm saying here.
Right.
So it's kind of a hard question to answer, I think, because it's just not, there's not one scenario, there's multiple scenarios that are, you know.
Exactly. He can't test something where we don't have a specific proposal.
Right. Well, can I interject here and I feel like this conversation is definitely putting the cart before the horse. I think where we need to be starting is you have this property. These are the access points that have been discussed in the past, and what have been the issues in creating those new access points. That's the first thing. That's how we kind of have to work here. In providing a rear access point, creating a road goes through the historical county seat. So therefore, is there really no way to provide that rear access point? That's what we need to find out, because if we're kind of stuck with the one in, one out entrance as we currently have it, then that kind of dictates what we can build. And I think that's the purpose of this meeting, is saying, this is what we have, this is what we know, and because of these details and these facts, this is what we can then say is acceptable to build on that site. Not really like, well, if we do this, then how many access points do we have? It's kind of, what do we have the ability to do access point wise, realistically? And then what does that dictate the area to become?
So Lindsay, I think maybe the approach then would be, do we revise a small area plan to only include scenarios that don't require second access? And then if the town is able to increase the likelihood of getting an additional access point, then we can go back and revise it to include additional scenarios. Does that make sense based on what you're saying?
I mean, yeah, that makes sense to me, to work with what we have instead of trying to plan for something that we don't know if we can realistically do. I mean, at our last planning commission, Matt, I mean, I think you said that the reason that we didn't have any info about a second access point was simply because the company doesn't pave roads. But has there been any further research? Would we really be prohibited via any reason, historical, private landowners reluctant to give up the access rights? Has there been any research on that where we can include that information, and then it whittles down again what we can and cannot do with the site?
Can I say that, first of all, Scottsville zoning ordinances say very clearly that any development in excess of 50 dwelling units requires a second access. So you've got your zoning ordinances. It is possible and preferable for you to put in the area plan that a second access is required. And then it is up to the developer to do it. There's nothing that says or implies that it is the town's responsibility to get that access. It's the town's responsibility to say, we cannot bear that much traffic, regardless of what the scenario is on our historic streets in a nationally recognized historic district. And therefore, Mr. Developer, you will find a way to buy an easement or find a way with adjoining landowners to get a safe and convenient access for not only people in the area, but for fire and safety and rescue. And that will be the developer's responsibility. You just have to put that into the plan that says that there will be a second access for any amount of development over 50 units.
So that's I think that's an accurate thing to say. One of the things that I want to hear from Matt, I think Lindsay's alluding to this, is do we know of any scenario where it's feasible for us to get the second access? And if not, do we even need to consider scenarios that would require a second access, or does that just simply muddy the waters to the point where it's hard for us to make any progress or any plan because you have to allow for 4 or 5 different contingencies where potentially we may only have to consider 1 or 2?
Yeah, I think I can say a little bit about that. The owner of the property shown on the map is not someone I've met, but Nancy Gill knows her and gave me 2 email addresses for her. So I let her know about this meeting and was upfront about people in town are talking about the idea of a road on your property. Maybe you want to talk to us about that. So I don't know the status of that conversation. I didn't get any answer back. This line that's shown does go on a single parcel. So in terms of road building, a developer only has to negotiate with 1 person. That's easier than negotiating with 10 people and assembling parcels. Lindsay pointed out that it is Scott's Landing Drive, the original site of Scott's Tavern and the original county courthouse where Albemarle County was formed is on this property. So you probably wouldn't want to drive a new road through that archaeological site. It is a big farm with lots of options to go into. The path of least resistance physically is probably the path of the current driveway, Scott's Landing Drive. That does sort of go along the contour of the land that's the flattest, would involve the least earthwork. As you move to other parts of that parcel, even on this aerial, you can see the shade where it gets steeper. But it could be aligned some other way. It's shorter if it goes like this. But in terms of accounting for it, it's 1 property owner. Susan's right, that's a negotiation that we could require of a developer, and that kind of thing gets done. I took a crack at costing it. Ballpark $1 million for that 2,000 square feet of VDOT accessible street. The redevelopment proposal that we got in our consultant study assumed a $25 million project. So adding another 4% to that is not the end of the world if you're going to the bank for $20–25 million. I did a real quick financial calculation just on assuming all residential. Hello. And basically how does the mortgage payment change if you add another $1 million to it? And it makes the apartments a little more expensive, but not prohibitively so. Financing another $1 million makes the whole buildings a little bit less affordable, but you probably save that in terms of fire insurance simply for getting something that's truly fire safe. And indeed, that is very important. A lot of the VDOT and county regulation goes to the issue of fire safety. Where did I put that? A nice picture of the fire truck. Sorry. The design of basically how big of a cul-de-sac do you need to get a fire truck into it. There it is. So good example picture, and these are pretty uniform regulations all over the country, but that cul-de-sac has to be big enough for the fire engine to do a K-turn so that the ladder can go back up to the house. It is the bane of creative architects around the country, that when they try to do smaller streets and have the houses closer together in sort of a European style, the fire marshal says, I need to be able to do this maneuver with my truck. Your cul-de-sac has to be that big. And so the town's design regulations have that in terms of street width, turning radius, and cul-de-sac diameter. And the county regulations are pretty much the same. They've reformed those a little bit since 1994, and the town has not updated theirs. But we're using Albemarle's regulations from 1994. So to answer your question, Bill, our regulations are the same as the county's as of 25 years ago. They've changed theirs a little bit, but they're pretty much the same.
Well, I kind of agree with Lindsay that I don't think we should deal with the situation with what we have. I think that having a road is years down the road, and maybe come up with another scenario then. But I was talking to somebody about an access road, and they were saying, like, I don't think it should go to Warren Street. It should go all the way to 6th. I mean, that's just moving our traffic problems to another part of the town. I mean, because you're going to have a lot of traffic up that way, and there'll be a lot of cut throughs going everywhere. So I just feel like we should just, you know, like Susan said, just note it, but really just deal with what we have for the purpose of this, because then we would simplify things. We would have to go through all these scenarios, and we wouldn't have, you know, hundreds of houses and apartments. And I mean, that seems like that's a lot. It's almost like we might need 2 plans. One is for second access, one is for single access. And I don't know if we should spend our time with the second one. That's my feeling anyway.
I just ask a couple questions. I know, I mean, run farms and stuff, if I want to put something in the driveway, not only do I have that clearance, but I have to have the ability for that traffic to get on and off. I'm very familiar with this road, and it's not divided or anything. Would it even be feasible to dump that kind of traffic onto that road? It doesn't seem like that road is anywhere would be able to handle it. And my other question is, we should know, or have the ability at some point, does the access this way still exist? Or have we given that back to the landowners? Because this road used to connect through. It used to go straight through. The plan used to be for it to come out there. Does that still exist, or do we bring that back and get it back to the landowners? That's what the original design is. But again, that road's not very big either to handle the traffic. So you're running into 2 questions. 1, can you put the road in? 2, will VDOT allow you to dump that much traffic onto the road?
Can everyone hear that online?
No, sorry.
Yep. Matt's pointing to the map and discussing road width at the intersection, concerned about can James River Road even handle that kind of traffic load in its current condition, because it's not efficient. And then he's also pointing out some of the old rights of way coming up off the north end of Page Street, connecting to Warren at a different place. And that would not be town-owned right of way because it's beyond the original town limits. There could be some other kind of easement that's backing the deed, but I don't have those deed access offhand, so I don't know.
But I mean, that's something I would think you'd want to know that answer. And you would certainly want to know before you decide whether or not you put a road, whether or not that VDOT would even allow it. It's a simple yes or no. You would meet with them, VDOT wise. It's just like if I want to put a driveway in, I have to go to VDOT. I don't go to you, I actually go to VDOT.
That's right.
You know, so VDOT would be able to answer, can we put a road in that handles that kind of traffic or not? And that would end your discussion, one way or the other. And what would it take to upgrade that road? And then my other question is, it's with this, when we get into the zone, we haven't rezoned this, correct?
That's right, it's all industrial now.
All right. There's nothing that says we have to rezone it, correct? If someone asks to rezone it, we don't have to rezone it. We can say no or yes, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then the other question is, by rezoning it, once you rezone this, unless things have changed, the town and the county are now responsible for that zoning, maintaining the minimum requirements of that zoning. So you're saying, well, the developer should have to put that road in, but once you rezone it, he can go, you got to put it in. Because you rezone it, and it has to meet the minimum requirements of that zoning. That's my understanding. I'd like someone to ask that question to someone to get an answer to them. Because we can step on ourselves, and that's true. And the reason I say that is that's what happened to us in North Carolina. Now that's in a different state. But the minute you rezone it, you're responsible for the minimum requirements by law for that zone. And if that means water, sewer, power, we're responsible, not the developer. If that means a road access, you're responsible because you've done all those studies and you said this can be this zoning. Now you're responsible. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'd like to have that checked out.
I've never seen a Virginia example of that, where you rezone and then take an obligation for all of the infrastructure.
I get that, but can we check that out? Because that's what we ran into North Carolina. There was no example of that either. And the developers sued, and the counties had to put a building moratorium in to end all building because they couldn't put the infrastructure in, and then tax base went through the ceiling because they were then required to do it.
Okay, I'll ask our attorney.
Yeah.
Could you rewrite this out and say, put a stipulation that if this is rezoned, then the developers responsible for all this?
I don't know that we're zoning and a lawyer.
I mean,
What I'm saying
I
is,
think we do have to put all the details in there because you're right that the developer will take advantage of that.
Is everyone online able to hear the conversation reasonably well?
Partially.
Okay, just, if you'll just let us know if you're having trouble hearing, I'm doing the best I can to run the microphone.
Yep.
Not,
Thank you.
not hearing a lot of it.
I just want to say that there is you can make the distinction between planning a property for mixed-use development and actually rezoning it.
Definitely.
So that you don't rezone it until you've got a site plan in front of you that you like well enough to say, okay, we'll rezone this on the basis of this of this site plan. And even if you plan it for mixed-use development, which is what we're trying to do, you can still make a requirement of that mixed-use development of what's in the zoning ordinance. That anything over 50 units that requires a second access.
The issue with that is that town council may decide they want it rezoned because it's going to make it more attractive to the developer. And if that's the case, we can sit here and theorize all we want, but they're gonna want to see that happen. So I think we just have to prepare for the possibility that they're still going to want to do that.
Could we advise strongly not to until you've got, again, make that distinction between planning it for mixed use and actually doing that. I know they want the certainty of it, but I would just advise caution.
I think that would be an important distinction to make in the steps of implementation on this. Certainly, proactive rezoning is something that localities do in advance of full site plans. You say this is an industrial park and it's zoned industrial because we want buildings to come here, or this is the edge of our town that we expect to grow. We're going to upzone it and that'll make it happen. So yeah, what level of certainty do you want in site plan before you take that step?
So I just want to kind of bring it back to a point that Lindsay was talking about earlier, which is that, and maybe I'm just drawing my own conclusion from this, but what I see as being worth considering is, and this is again to Matt, and maybe you don't know the answer to this because maybe this happened prior to your time, but do we even think it's possible for any of these property owners to give us access rights?
Offer enough money.
Is it, well, that's right, that's fair, but I mean, I'd like to know what the conversation has been, because again, we're considering this, but we don't even have, I mean, they're not here now, so we can't ask them. So who's asked them and what is the response been? Hell no, get off my property or I'm gonna shoot you? Or has it been, I'm just not really interested in something like that, in which case you're like, well, that means they would just want you to make them an offer. So I'm just curious to know what the conversation is, because I think, again, not that I necessarily want to narrow down our options for this, but if our options are narrow already, there's no point in considering other options that we don't even have the ability to do. And it would make it simpler for us to consider traffic and things like that if we know that we just don't have an option to get another second access road in there anytime in the near future.
Yes, exactly it. That's exactly it.
With the rest of the plan, we assume existing infrastructure. We say one of the assets of this site is it has water and sewer and gas, internet already going to it. That's one of the reasons to look at investing there and not something else. So the first draft that we did assume no new roads. And then the concern about, well, okay, that generates too much traffic on the existing streets. So do we work on that second road, or do we just discuss what's the appropriate build out within the roads that we have?
I think that's it. I mean, I think that's why everybody's here, because we're trying to work with what we have as we have it, that still makes the town what it is and livable, and not fill it with some sort of unmanageable traffic pattern. So, and that's, I think, the point of all of these meetings that we're going to have moving forward as we go from topic to topic, is saying, these are the boundaries that we currently have to work with. So how do we make sure that this small area plan, that's essentially a wish list and, is a document of the things that the town would like to bring in, that it all goes hand in hand? That's why I feel like with my conversations with some of the folks that are there, that the concern becomes, we're really trying to overdo this, and we don't have the ability to go that big. And that's the concern. This is what we have to work with. What can we bring in here that works within those confines and makes use of what we have? So, I mean, and in working with this traffic scenario specifically, I think that's what we need to be doing. We need to kind of cross out some of these things that are that just don't work for a one in, one out plan. But that, are bullet points of the things that we want. We just have to think a little smaller, unfortunately.
Sometimes things aren't all that simple. Land use planning is really complex, because the other issue on this is, which hopefully we will get to look at more detail, is housing. I mean, one of the things that the plan says that there is a need for additional housing, and that is an ideal, and certainly the developer you've been working with wants to put houses in. I'm sure a developer has, a price point at which it's, for the amount of work that it's and money it's gonna cost to refurbish that factory building itself, regardless of the various interesting ideas that have been put forth to do it, he's got to get enough return on investment that he's going to get from his houses, right, to be able to afford to do what we would like to see happen in the factory building itself. So there is a complex, and there is a trade-off there, and which then takes you back to, if you want more than 50 houses, then you got to have the second access.
If you, in that scenario, if you want any houses, you have to have a second access. If you're going to have any houses, you're going to have 100, because it's just not feasible to have 50 units, and they have to renovate the entire plant, and that plant has considerably more room than 50 units. Let's just say apartments. There's considerably more room than 50 apartments there. So for them to renovate half of it doesn't make sense, but certainly doesn't make sense to renovate the whole thing if they can only build it in 50 units in there. So that's I'm just saying,
that's where the complexity arises, and then you back to what your zoning ordinance says, right, and a second access, which is the developer's responsibility to go out and find if he really wants to do it.
So I think the question then becomes, if you're not wanting to consider a second road because it doesn't make sense, it doesn't seem feasible right now, do you consider only developing the undeveloped property now, the vacant acreage, and then once that's successful, then you try to attract someone that's willing to put the second road in and develop the whole plant. The problem with that is, and as we discussed, is we don't want to have that plant down there with all these houses around it. It doesn't really make sense to have a decrepit plant surrounded by nice new houses. So in what order do you do this without stepping on something?
I got to that same point pretty quickly, that you really got two projects and they sit next to each other. They're already split up as different parcels with two different LLCs owning them, same owner at the end of the day. But yeah, you're thinking about two different things. And the hillside housing has a very different set of issues in it than the factory renovation. Maybe one of them is easier to tackle first.
The other issue I see is, and this is just a general point, it's nothing technical, but does the town really want that many more units up there, A, and not that it's up to that community that's right there to decide for the entire town, but I'm pretty sure that community up the west downtown area does not want to be dwarfed by some new development. So it's a really tricky situation where something's got to give, and everything is kind of like rock, paper, scissors. Something's always beating every scenario all the way around. And I just don't know. Like I said, Matt and I talked about the idea of doing some kind of plan that gradually grew that area so that you didn't have a sudden influx to where the new houses outnumbered the old houses, and then that neighborhood completely lost its feel, and the new residents didn't really feel the need to sort of mix in with the existing neighborhood, so that they sort of become their own neighborhood, and then they don't really engage in the community, and there's just some issues with sort of integrating there. So a scenario where you say you can't grow it more than 25%, every 3 years or something like that, and as it gets bigger, the number of new units could, proportionally get larger, or more numerous. So that was something that we discussed. But again, you run into the issue. You've got the tire plant down there, and you don't want a tire plant that looks like crap unless you want to put a bunch of big tall hedges around it.
Are you saying that the owner has approached you about renovating the warehouse?
No.
So we're hoping someone might choose to do that someday?
It's all for sale.
But the scenario to renovate that warehouse, because it's been gutted the way it has been, would be very expensive.
Yes.
And almost not realistic.
We got a profitable pro forma, but it requires someone with apartments to pay.
And then the other question is, what is the benefit for the town by getting 100 apartments?
Well,
What is, again, what is the need for housing? What is the build out? How much capacity do we have available? What are the growth projections for the area?
My question is, what's the benefit of having, no, just leave it there.
No, but they need to be able to hear what you're saying.
What's the benefit by having 100 homes put in the town? We don't get any real estate taxes. What else does it do for us? And then what's the impact that we're going to have to absorb for supporting Albemarle County and Charlottesville? So the question is, what does it really do for us? Putting in 100 apartments in that warehouse.
I've heard that, one of the rationales is to have more people buy things in town and support the businesses here. So that would help them. But my question has always been, how much do people spend in town, and what, if they spend $5,000 a year, that's $200 they spend a year, So it'd be good to have a financial study to see what we spend, or what we would get per person if we go to the businesses here.
Well, and I'm going to pass this over to somebody, but the point I want to make is a lot of our business comes from outside of the town, and so adding 100 houses in the town puts a burden on the town. But we've got a metropolitan area, if you will, a greater Scottsville area of what, probably 15 to 20,000 people. Who wanted to talk? Oh, sure.
My question is that some of the buildings downtown are still being renovated now. So even if we had things, we would be able to fill them. And like you said,
I'm sorry, we're not picking up any of that on the microphone.
I was saying, my question is that some of the buildings downtown are already being renovated with apartments up top, and they can't be filled. So if we can't fill those, how do we expect to fill 100 units? And there again, it goes back to benefit of the city. You're also not benefiting the community as a whole. You're only benefiting the 100 people that occupy those 100 units.
So,
So there's two things in that.
well, just because you can't fill renovated apartments over the commercial space does not necessarily mean that the development with its own sales and marketing team is not going to be able to fill up 100 units. But It's a valid point.
It's not my place to make the case generally for workforce housing in the community, and I'm not going to do that. If anybody wants to speak for why housing is an inherent good, they can do that. I can speak to the demographic growth. Albemarle County projects to add 30,000 people in the next 30 years. That's the census trajectory. That's the overall planning that they're doing. And 30,000 people will take places to live. You see the housing market in Charlottesville going higher and higher. Apartment buildings are getting built and filling in the city. Townhouse developments are being built and filling up, sprawling to the north, and then around us in Waynesboro, Greene County, all the way to Madison. So the market demand is strong. We haven't had the new development here in town. The existing home sales have been strong in the past couple of years. I think you've seen the price of existing home sales going up and the time on market coming down. Poorly maintained apartments or apartments that don't show well, maybe they sit empty, but the good ones stay full. And we have higher vacancy in the storefront commercial spaces, the business downstairs, than we do in the apartments. A few of the anecdotes that I have, I only had 2 apartments to choose from when I moved here. It was one or the other. And I talked to a restaurant worker on Sunday who moved to Richmond because she couldn't get a place to live here. So that's all I can say on that.
So I don't want to get too far afield theoretically, but I want to just make one more point here and just add this to the list of things kind of chasing each other's tails, which is, do we want a vacant tire plant sitting there indefinitely? If we don't, we have to develop it. If we're going to develop it, we need to develop it fully. If we're going to develop it fully, we need to prepare for a second road and for a certain amount of people coming in. So then go back, all the way back, and ask the question again, do we want that sitting there vacant indefinitely? And I don't think any of us, the answer is yes, but what is the scenario where we develop it and we don't put in 100 or more units in there? That's the point of this. And that's the point of this. So I know that we are trying to talk about traffic, and I'm okay with deviating from traffic. But this started with the question of, do we want to consider enough traffic for 100 or more units, or do we want to just only consider a scenario where there's 50 units and simplify the process? So this is all sort of at the root of this question, is there a way to develop that? Again, sort of just developing the empty lots and somehow screening that building from view, but then you still have an empty building. So is there a way to develop down there without doing 100 more units?
Matt, did the pro forma that we got from Waukesha only look at the factory building itself, or were they including the open hillside lot in that analysis as well?
They treated those as 2 separate projects.
Okay.
The kind of logic with that one was that the greenfield housing construction is a pretty profitable business. It doesn't need help. If you zone a piece of good ground for any kind of residential density and it's got a street and utilities, the housing market around here is pretty good and that construction will happen. Renovating the blighted historic building is more of a can of worms and maybe requires some state and federal incentives. So that was the consultant study to run that pro forma. And it did assume the use of historic tax credits, environmental remediation grants, and state economic development support. So it's only profitable with those incentives at an affordable price point. Now, because they were also working within a workforce housing box. If you double the rent and call them luxury apartments, then you have something profitable. But your argument is, will the people who are paying $2,000 a month in Charlottesville pay $2,000 a month here in Scottsville? And we didn't think that was true.
Can I jump in a little bit on that?
Please, as a realtor, what do you see?
When they send out inquiries, for homes and stuff, and they say outside of Charlottesville.
Yeah.
And then I send back saying I got 3 places in Scottsville. They say, oh, too far. So I think unfortunately, you're gonna have to understand that people aren't gonna commute from here out there as much as they will. They're gonna develop around Charlottesville for that group. So the question is, how are you gonna keep them here? And by putting a bunch of homes in there while impacting the town, while impacting the historical, may or may not be the solution. But what you have to keep in mind is you have one gentleman who owns those properties. There's one gentleman who got them incredibly cheap. There's one gentleman who hasn't put anything into it. And if you want to sit there and rezone the one section and make him profitable, the minute you rezone that property, you're making him a millionaire. There's no guarantee he's going to do anything except for sell it to someone else to redo it. And still no guarantee he's going to do anything to that tire factory, which has been allowed to fall apart under his ownership. I believe if you really want to work with someone that owns both those properties, without it being rezoned, you have to insist that the tire factory becomes something. There are people who have approached him about putting in a medical facility center there. The reason for it was that if people are working there in any kind of medical facility, people come and go all day. That would get people in your town. That would get people to do something. And then because of that, you would probably have housing needs. Which one is it, the chicken or the egg? I think if you allow someone to make a huge amount of money just by you waving a magic wand and rezoning it, they're going to do that. Just like they did at Pantops, and every zoning rule that exists is because of what went wrong in Pantops. And so I don't think we'd want to trust someone with that. So you don't want to rezone it and put it in and then say, here, we hope you're going to take care of this mess over here. We need to negotiate with whoever owns that property and put restrictions on or conditions on or contingent on. You want us to do that for your, and put those homes in so you can make some money, you're going to have to do this for this facility. And whether or not it's developing that section right in front of the facility, which is enough room to put in a medical facility, but still will have a huge impact on our town, or whether or not it's actually renovating that building, those have to be part of the contingent before we give them this nugget. And if we're going to do something like that, we're going to need alternative routes. We're going to need alternative routes because you can't keep putting it through town. The only way to get that kind of traffic through town is to take the parking off the streets. Where are we going to put the cars? Do we have him put a parking lot in? Maybe, I mean, a parking garage? Yeah, maybe. That may be part of the conditions. We're not here to make him a rich man or anyone else. We're here to do what's best for the town. And so we have to take it very seriously what kind of impact this is going to have, because who's going to pay for it? That's just my point on that. But when you're saying about homes going quickly, they are. But you have to understand, in the beginning of the year, we had a thing called COVID. People lost their jobs. People lost their qualification because they were furloughed. To get their qualification to get a loan back, it takes at least a month of them working. And right now, the market is incredibly hot because people are now requalified, and they're not too sure in 3 months if they're going to have that qualification, thus that job again. So the market is popping because of that. That's an external event that's happening. That's not necessarily the demand in Scottsville. Does that make any kind of sense? So keep that in mind when you look at numbers. And I think when you look at Albemarle growth, you're looking in and around Charlottesville. It's more realistic to think of that. There's growth everywhere, don't get me wrong, right? And you build it, they will come. There's no arguing that. The question is, what is the impact going to be to our community if we do that? But if we did a medical center, if we did something different, if we required that tire factory not to be an eyesore, but to be fixed and contingent before we allow him to make $1 million, or anyone, whoever he sells it to, or maybe when someone inherits it with his family. But we need to think that you can't do one or the other. I think they have to be together.
So can I summarize an actionable item then based on what you're saying, which is, do we say we will zone the property mixed use or what is it, R2, R3, whatever the maximum profit for him is, if you are proactive about doing something with the plant that is beneficial to the town. Is that sort of where you're going with that?
So I'm saying it needs to be contingent. If you want to do this, we're not going to let you do that. You do this.
And you show us your site plan.
Right. And now someone said, well, no, I'm all developed. And the question is, right? How much is this going to impact the area? You put in a medical facility or something like that where people are coming and going. That's where the town and their businesses will benefit. Having a bunch of people living on the outskirts or over there doesn't guarantee. There's people up on Harrison Street that do not come down to eat and hang out in town. You know, there's no guarantee that they're not going to be shopping online. They're not going to be buying at Harris Teeter on their way home or wherever they are working, because they're not working in town. That just putting people in town does not guarantee traffic or business. But putting in an industry that will bring people during the day where they have to find things like food and shopping or whatever, or even walking, parking, there's all sorts of things that could be going on. That, in my opinion, my humble opinion, is what's going to impact it. And then the housing will make sense because it will support that industry that is going to help our town. But again, you still have the impact of that traffic, no matter what you put in there. And there has to be a solution for that. And so we do need to explore whether or not we can go up to the road or whether or not we can extend it. And if we can't, then you got 20 homes back there and that's about it. And if that doesn't make sense to a developer, then it doesn't make sense.
And I think everything that Matt's saying really hones in on the vision statement for the comprehensive plan, where the last part of it is the harmonious development plan, which will best promote the well-being of its residents and maintain quality of life for all. So we're talking about our current residents. We're not talking about hopeful would-be residents, which may or may not acclimate into the rest of the community. So I really like everything that Matt's saying, and coming back to why we're at this meeting is what I think we just need to continue to reflect in this plan. And, you know, it would be great to really just take these traffic scenarios, take mobility, since it all goes hand in hand, and make sure we are only including the things that do exactly what the statement comes back to. You know, so will 100 apartment development, does that really go with a harmonious development plan for our well-being? Not necessarily, just like Matt said. You know, I know we've talked about a medical center and creating jobs. That is what we should be really honing in on.
What happened to family activities like a multi-use center? Because there is a huge need for that, and that.
We're not able to hear you.
Sorry. What happened to the thought of, and I see it still on here, of like a multi-use facility that serves the community we have now? Right now, a lot of people, a lot of families go to Charlottesville or even Dillwyn or, you know, Fluvanna or wherever for sports and activities and things like that, because there's only a very limited number here. And if you look at the numbers for housing, most of the housing people are looking at 150 to 200,000, and they don't want to pay more than $1,000 for rent. So one, there's a lack of that here, but again, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? But nonetheless, we already have a community that is lacking in these resources and reaching out to other places. Whereas if we had them here, they would do more shopping here. They would spend more time in downtown. You know, they would do other things. If they've got to take their kids to the skating rink, you know, what are they going to do? They're going to eat. They don't have time to go home and have dinner. You know, if they got a Friday night movie night somewhere over there, they're going to come and have pizza. They're going to get something to go and have a picnic on the park. I mean, they're going to do things. So I still think that's a really viable option, is to expand it to like a multi-use, maybe a YMCA in part of it, maybe, you know, some other activities, bowling, I mean, whatever. But there's a lot of room there to do a lot of different things. It doesn't have to all be dedicated to one.
I know we're getting away from traffic a bit, but I know one of the things we had talked about at our first meeting is really figuring out, and it's coming up here, is figuring out what could happen at the factory, because that's key. Everything stems from that, and also if anything can happen there. So because as Jim mentioned, nobody wants to be in a house where we don't know what's next door. So can anything happen there? Is developer interested in anything happen there? Will he put the money in there? And also, we still don't even have the flood control study. Will it be allowed to happen there? I mean, because of the price of flood insurance and things like that. So I think we need to probably look at traffic, but we also need to look at, the factory is key. What could that happen? And I agree. It'd be nice to have some services rather than apartments and shops. I think services like a community center, a place for police, people to come to a play or something or whatever. But I don't see factories and shops as the key there. But the factories, I think, the key.
Can I say, if we're looking for, as Peter said, deliverables, there are currently in the small area plan 4 scenarios. One of them calls for 200 apartments, and then daycare, restaurant, gym, some of the family-oriented things, and that generates 2,500, 2,600 trips a daily. The second one is a tech park, which would be workspace. That had 30 single family, 30 single, 95 multifamily apartments, 77 square feet, 77,000 square feet of daycare, restaurant, that same package. And that's the largest one that would generate almost 4,000 trips a day on top of the 7,500 that are currently estimated to be on Valley Street. The third one is the medical, the health, that would provide medical offices. Again, the package of daycare, restaurant, gym, medical offices, clinics, maybe some light industrial shops. That's 2,800 units a day, of trips a day. And then the fourth one is 75 single family, 100 apartments in the renovated factory itself. One of the things that we could decide tonight is to say, we're not going to consider one or more of these, because my question was, how did we get to 200 apartments when the growth rate for Scottsville was only going to be about 2.5%, as opposed to the mix of single family and residential.
Yeah, I want to share nothing on that. I'd like to empower the group with a tool that came from my VDOT conversation.
Yes, we need to do that.
And let's see, that's this one. So on VDOT's website, there is a mixed use development spreadsheet. And it is the tool that VDOT uses for their initial quick and dirty traffic study before they get into the big engineering. That website is, let's see my little bar here. I want to touch that. Stay on that. The title of it is Mixed Use Trip Generation Model. And it's a spreadsheet that goes through the little formulas. They have provided all of the trip generation numbers. So when I did the calculations that are in this plan, I had to go and consult the physical books and try to tabulate it all. And I'm not a traffic engineer, so I don't want to swear to those numbers at all. So this is the VDOT tool. And I would like to offer that as common ground for us to run numbers and think about what different combinations of uses will mean as far as trip generation. And maybe we can come at something that feels good for us. So as a real quick example, this afternoon, I said, we're only gonna touch half the property. half of it's going to stay floodplain, wetland, undevelopable, forested. Within the project, there's going to be 4 little intersections. It'll have its own little internal streets of some kind. It'll have an occasional jaunt service, like we have occasional jaunt service at Java now. It's close to a little small town. There's a few jobs here, but there's a lot of jobs in Charlottesville. All of these numbers are already provided. So it assumes a 3.2 person single family house, 2.5 people living in a multifamily apartment. And then from the traffic generation manuals, all of these numbers of jobs and car trips for different kinds of uses. So going on down, the little example that I did was 40 houses, 80 apartments, no high rise, a little restaurant, some manufacturing space, office industrial space, storage space, and that gets you 1,500 trips, including 168 during peak rush hour. And so this is an open source tool that anybody can type in any combination of uses that they want to try to arrive at a number that feels good. So by all means, have at it. And if you want to run any preferred scenario and replace the ones that are in the plan document, we find a little sample image and put the number in and we're good.
Can I ask an observation?
Yep.
You don't have to put the camera on. I don't like cameras. So what we've all been talking about and all those projected scenarios of what ifs or could be's, right now, the way everything is set up, none of them can work with the infrastructure presently in place.
All the big ones are in the road.
What's that?
All the big ones require a new road.
That's what I'm saying. So right now, all these things we're bantering back and forth, none of them can work with the way the present traffic is and the intersections. So the real question is then, so what Lindsay pointed out is, what do we have? Well, what we have is we can't do anything much back there. So the question is, in my opinion, what's the next step? What are we going to find out? What can we do to be able to develop back there? And if we can't, then we can't develop back there. Does that kind of make sense?
So the question becomes, I guess we need to go talk to the property owners. Well, no, I understand that, but we have to know if it's even feasible before we develop a small area plan that requires developers to be able to do that. So if we go to them and we say, I understand your concern with Scottsville becoming responsible for the roads, but we still need to know if it's even an option for a developer before we even try to attract a developer. And so I'm not saying that we go to them and say, can we put a road in, and then we put a road in. I'm saying we need to find out from the property owners, is this even an option for you? If somebody were to come along, should we include this in our small area plan, an option to build, or an understanding that it is feasible to build a road there in order for a developer to do something?
So we actually have quite a few things we can research right now. Is one, can we extend, is that bird back there? Can that be extended the way it used to be? Can we?
8th Street, I believe.
What's that?
North Cape.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah. That's why I said I didn't know. And then, do we have the ability to go through that person's property? We can ask that question. But the real question, before we even bother that property owner, is going to VDOT and saying, if we get permission to go through and put a road in there, can it dump out onto this road?
Right.
I think we might be a little disappointed to find out that VDOT's going to say no. But we need to know that to be able to, if someone comes in and wants to do development, if we're landlocked, we're landlocked.
I'm not ready for the riot that's going to happen if we start talking about reusing an old easement there through Bird Street or whatever street that is up there.
It doesn't really help because it puts all the traffic through and out the street.
Right. So I don't even want to consider that option. Well,
I wasn't saying that, I was saying that those are the two options.
right.
So,
but I think realistically we have one option. Which
pursue them or eliminate.
I think we eliminate whatever goes through the current residential area there.
I have a hard time believing VDOT isn't going to be able to answer the question.
Right.
I think they could answer.
Yeah. And so why don't we find that out and then we'll see what it is.
I have a semi-embarrassing question. Does Dr. Hurt know that we're doing a small area plan?
Does who?
Dr.
Dr. Hurt,
Yes,
the
absolutely.
property owner?
Yes.
He does, okay.
And he had a liaison who had been involved in this process earlier on.
Okay.
I thought they were going to have family members and staff here this evening.
Well, is it Susan?
Susan, Olivia, Charlie,
Yeah.
all involved.
Susan was active in some of the tours that we took and some of the meetings that we had with Waukesha and some other folks. And she's the agent for the property. She works for Virginia Land Company. So yes, she's been filled in on a lot of this stuff just through participation. I'm sure there's been a lot of offline conversations with her. So yeah, they're definitely pretty up to speed as far as what's going on. I'm sure they've seen copies of this.
I'm sorry, what was that last thing that you said?
I said I'm sure they've seen copies of the document.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Sorry, just, I don't think we had ever discussed that before, so I just wasn't sure.
So I'm just gonna, I'm gonna come back to the point here, which is, I think what we need to do is explore the option of putting a road out to James River Road. We need to talk to the property owner. We need to talk to VDOT. I think those are the two action items that we need to do before we have any idea of what can be done back there. Honestly, there is a small chance in a scenario where most of the options that we would like to see there are just not feasible. That's a possibility. So we need to find out what is feasible. And I think those are the two things: talking to VDOT, talking to the property owner, and seeing what the deal is there. And I don't know who would initiate that conversation or how that would go, but I think that would be something we definitely do. I'll jump on that.
I was gonna say, the first question is yay, and no, we have to take it to step three. VDOT said no, there's no reason to even engage.
Right. Did everybody hear that?
Yeah.
So VDOT needs to be in the first stop we make.
And I'm new to this committee. Can you give me the history? Has the Hurt family approached you saying they want to do something, or did they just approach you and say, I want to be zoned, and then we'll talk about it? What's the history? I'm not familiar with it at all.
I'll speak to what happened on my first day of work with Scottsville. It was March 2nd, 2018, and that was the day of a planning commission meeting. And that was the follow-up from planning commission voting no on a spot rezoning application from Virginia Land Company to take a portion of their hillside and build a row of houses along Bird Street. And that was before a comprehensive plan update. It was before any discussion of a small area plan. And we said, we're not going to give you the low-hanging fruit of some quick houses on Bird Street until we know what's going on with the rest of this property. Does that describe the planning commission at that time?
Yeah. And I can address a little bit.
Because you were there.
Okay. He submitted I don't know if he submitted a proposal, but there was a proposal three, 4 years ago about having a firing range there. And that was never approved. And then he's put in 2 or 3 spot zoning ideas, concepts. He never did an engineered drawing or anything, but he had one for about 30 houses. And then there was another one for 15 or 18 houses. So he put those in there, but the concern was always that, you know, what's going to be next door. And so he's tried to develop that one section, but never the whole problem.
So we're here because we're looking for that big picture plan instead of jumping.
Yeah.
And I would just add to that town council has endorsed, I mean, in endorsing and requesting the small area plan, they endorsed an idea very similar to what Matt, you were describing earlier, and what we've just been talking about, this idea that they're not interested in doing anything with just one piece of such a large site, they want to see somebody come forward with a complete plan that addresses the complete site before they'd consider anything.
Can I ask you a question then? If
Sure.
we talk to VDOT, and VDOT says putting a road up there is impossible for the traffic being dumped up there, that kind of ends all requests besides a few homes. Is the town council on board with that, or is that are we gonna see what else we can do? Like, what's the town council? Because I know this reports to town council, correct?
This does, yeah. And I would say, I mean, the guiding document here in a lot of ways is our comprehensive plan, you know, that points to those sort of growth rate numbers and overall objectives of, you know, things to protect and things to invest in as the community grows. You know, they're not site specific. So I suppose the easiest answer is to say, you know, town council is interested in pursuing those goals throughout town.
So I want to ask a quick question, and I think we've made some progress, but I do want to make some progress on traffic related. I'd like to have some kind of something that, you know, body of text that we can, you know, use as some progress that we've made on that particular topic. So I do want to switch back to that at some point. But my question is, what scenarios, because I understand that there's housing units restrictions, but what commercial, light industrial scenarios are permitted down there with one road in, one road out? So if we have mixed use with 50 housing units and a bunch of commercial, is that the same? Is that allowed because the only restriction is about housing units, or is the restriction also apply to commercial space or industrial space? Good point. That's cul-de-sac radius. Streets and roads.
This is the section, isn't it, Susan?
Matt, you don't have a screen share up.
Oh, thank you. Yes, thank you. The previous section. So it's 50 or more residential. It doesn't say the same thing about industrial and commercial.
So there's no restriction. So if we put 50 houses in there and put however many shops to fill the rest of the space up, we're not running into any zoning issues.
Or if the current null case, if an industrial use happens and generates traffic, there's not a zoning barrier to that. Right. We can't make a new factory build us a new road.
We could make it contingent on it, could we not? We decided that was going to be, I would imagine, an industrial park would impact the traffic far more than 50 homes.
But it's currently zoned industrial, so there's no, you know, anybody who has a by right use could come in and wouldn't have to ask the town for anything.
But if you plan it for mixed use, we don't have a mixed use zoning ordinance.
Correct. Right. No, I was just addressing the industrial question there.
You can put in your provision of more than 50 dwelling units to have a second access, and you can also factor in the impact of the additional traffic from whatever happens in the factory, whether it's however it's developed. And I'm presuming that that's in what you have in here. Yes. That did factor in. Yeah.
Sure.
So I think we have a few things that that Matt has agreed to take care of, which is first of all reaching out to VDOT about access, an access road that dumps into James River Road. and then to speak to the property owners if VDOT says that that's feasible under some scenario. What I'd like to do is just have, I don't want to drag this on too long, and if anybody really has anything pressing they want to contribute before wrapping up, we'll definitely do that. But I want to talk a little bit about specific traffic, and I'd like to take, tell me what you guys think, but maybe a scenario where we have a second access road and a scenario where we have a single access road, and just have a few ideas of what we would like to see as far as sidewalks or safety measures. If we have a second access road, do we take some measures to ensure that people are using that as the primary access, meaning it's a big enough, significant enough road that people just don't consider using Bird Street, except for local traffic if they're going down to shop or to eat on the downtown area. So just some ideas as far as like some parameters that we would like to see specific to traffic based on a couple of assumptions. So if you have something you want to throw out there, throw it out there with the assumption of one road or two roads, and then we can kind of use that as something that Matt can use for this document.
Can I throw a little fun on that? Maybe in wrapping up, give me a little bit more help with positive vision for what you think this looks like, right? We're mostly talking defensively about what the concerns are, what kind of impacts we need to avoid. But we also need to be positive about what do we care about in the community, and what do we want to make better and leave for after we're gone. And a skating rink, a movie theater, things for kids to do, job creating, that kind of thing. Let me work with that. And then I can put that within the constraints and say, this is what we are trying to do. That would be super helpful.
Would mind going back to
Please.
just in case you've got any information on that.
What do you want?
Well, the traffic to the second and the fifth question about widening, looking at just a one-way scenario, one way in and one way out. Would we have to widen the roads? Can we widen the roads in a historic district like Bird Street, for example? We'd have to take somebody's property there, either the church or that. And can we do that in a historic district? Those are the second and the fifth question. So first of all, the one is, it's a national historical area. Can we widen the roads there and change the roads drastically? And can we just have 18-foot roads? I just wonder if you got that from VDOT, if we'd have to, widen our roads and change them.
Currently.
Pardon?
Assume current right.
So we wouldn't have to. We'd be okay. Okay. So we could live with those roads. We wouldn't have to take the property. Okay. And as far as the historical district, it wouldn't affect our historical district if we did that. I mean, I don't know the historical district regulations.
We got a couple of good. Sorry, I just not to interrupt, Bill, but I do really want to have some kind of something constructive specifically relating to traffic out of this meeting before we run out of time. So I'd love to hear some ideas of things that would taken into account certain assumptions, like having a second access road with a certain number of units, or just a single access with, say, 50 units. What would we like to see done to mitigate the effect of having additional traffic on there, so that it's less onerous for the town as a whole, and particularly that neighborhood. So I'd like to hear some specific things that we might be able to use in this document specifically related to traffic.
Well, when I said earlier that traffic and mobility go hand in hand, it's because in order to reduce some of the car traffic, we're going to want to make sure that people who are living there, who are accessing the businesses or whatever goes into that area, are then able to walk. They're able to walk safely on a sidewalk. They are able to be outside and enjoy green spaces. But, you know, especially if we're talking about this development of whatever it becomes, then benefiting the rest of the town, the people need to be able to move from point A to point B into the town safely. So, you know, I think in this plan, traffic, mobility, they need to be next to each other. They go hand in hand. We need to discuss sidewalks. We need to discuss anything that really provides enjoyment outside between in that area and going into the rest of the town. You know, nice, you know, if we had talked about native plants coming into Scottsville, about maintaining the Bee City reputation, that all kind of goes together. So that's my thought, is that, you know, really making sure that there's a good path for foot traffic is extremely important in reducing car traffic.
No, and I think that makes total sense. I agree with you. I also think, to add on to that, that if you're going to have additional traffic on the road, you need the sidewalks, even if it's just for people who are just walking from another part of town up there, because that has been a walking path for a while for a lot of folks. So any foot traffic, you know, in the sense that it reduces driving traffic, that's great. Also, for those that are going to walk it regardless, so that they're not, you know, in any sort of high risk scenario, I think you probably have to have sidewalks in this situation. You're looking at me, but you're not nodding or.
Sorry, that's a common requirement of developers.
Yeah.
That you build the new thing with sidewalks.
Right. So sidewalks, we're going to assume that. I think one of the things that comes along with this is, if we have single access and we have sidewalks, how does that affect the library and the brick building that's on the other side of the library, which I don't know what that is. Is that part of the?
It's an old part of the school that's empty now.
Okay, so that may end up going bye-bye then. Yeah. Okay. So that's probably the easy solution for that narrow quarter there, would be that brick building going away.
So if we're going to put more traffic on the infrastructure, the roads that lead into that development, the roads themselves are already narrow. The roads already have people parking on it. The roads don't. Most of them have sidewalks. There's no room for sidewalks without moving into people's lawns. It would make sense then, the only solution, if we're going to pump all this traffic into the existing structure, you would have to change to some kind of one-way situation.
Sure.
Or
That is something actually that the police chief has entertained before under the existing circumstances, especially around 4th of July and other busy days. He's often commented about sort of moving to a circular one-way system in this neighborhood, you know, western downtown area, would help organize some of that traffic better on our busiest days.
So the question is, with what we have in place, will a one-way work?
He has seemed to think that it would address the impact, you know, the problem days that we've already had. And of course, on 4th of July, you know, that's as bad of a traffic situation down here as one could imagine. And it would be, I believe, within our jurisdiction to approach VDOT about that. And you know, they would usually defer to our requests on that sort of thing.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So someone needs to actually take a look at, do we have the ability to do one-ways, or are we going to wind up one way into the wrong way? Or is everything going to be one-way into the, condensed into a one-way? And then if we're going to put sidewalks onto these narrow streets, to eliminate parking on the street. And if we eliminate parking on this, I'm just asking.
Sure, there is a VDOT easement on most of these streets already where there aren't sidewalks constructed. For instance, I live on Bird Street on the corner of Bird and Page, and the front, you know, 3 feet of my lawn is not my lawn, it's a VDOT easement. And so, you know, there would be no land transfer necessary or anything like that if VDOT wanted to construct a sidewalk across my front yard.
So let me present a scenario where this would work, and tell me if you see any issues with this, anybody. One way in being up, for example, Bird Street, and then one way out would be down maybe the second road going into the plant, and then back out in front of the library, down Page Street, and then I don't know the road that runs in front of the old post office.
That's West Main. Jim, I think what Jeff has talked about before is sort of turning Bird Street one way up to that intersection with Page. You'd have to leave it two-way past the library there so that you could get return traffic from the ball fields and stuff. You direct traffic, as Matt's showing here, going down Page Street and out West Main Street to rejoin Route 20. And you would probably turn Harrison Street into one way heading north. Matt, if you could show that from the bottom going all the way up the hill there.
Well, I think that actually could alleviate some problems. For example, on Bird Street, Bird Street, because right now you have traffic going two ways.
And you get people parking on both sides of the street.
We only need room for one way, which would allow you to put more sidewalks on there. Put sidewalks on the north side of the street, or add on-street parking. Actual on-street parking on that side, and still have room for traffic.
That was what Jeff was thinking, was if it went to one way on these streets, you'd be able to line on-street parking spaces more easily. As the map shows here with the perspective sidewalk on the south side of Bird Street, you could line parking spaces on the north side of Bird Street, right, and still have your flow of traffic, your full lane of traffic.
And then as far as having two-way traffic in front of the library, that's going to be obviously significantly more traffic than there's now. But again, with that brick building being able to potentially be removed, which I'm assuming a developer would find some way to negotiate that, you could actually have a fairly wide road there and not restrict library parking, and actually make it nicer than it is now, and certainly suitable for what it would need to be.
And as you see on the map there is that same VDOT easement that continues down on that side of the street. So you get about the same 3 feet or so of grass between the road and that building. Maybe a little more than that actually there. But
our current draft has some vague language about talking to VDOT about road alignment, but it doesn't get this detailed with that kind of concept. But that's certainly doable. And in terms of construction, signs and paint are the easiest thing for VDOT to jump on and do.
Did the police chief look at any of the traffic impacts of any of the development of the tire factory? He obviously knows what happens, on 4th of July and circulation problems with current use, but has he looked at what the impacts would be of some of these various scenarios?
no, I don't believe he has. As we were talking about one way here, I wanted to include that, that had been something currently discussed under the current impacts that we've had. But no, I don't believe he's been involved too much in the prospective impacts.
The police concern has had more to do with the current condition in terms of vandalism, vagrancy, arson, that sort of thing.
But we are looking a little bit long-term here.
I'm not, maybe you can clarify, I don't see where input from the police chief would be relevant to traffic flow concerns, but I'm curious to know why that would be.
Well, if depending on which one of these scenarios, which some have some significantly higher traffic projections, adding on to Valley Street, and I think you've got to, even though VDOT wouldn't look at anyone's under 5,000, by the time you add the cumulative impact of 7,500 car trips a day on Valley Street, and I would think that the police chief might have some ideas or some thoughts about if we're pouring another additional 3,000 cars a day onto Valley Street and the smaller historic streets. I was just curious, we are thinking long-term, even though it's a small area plan, we're thinking long-term, and it's the intent of the town to carry this forward over many years. I would be curious what the police chief would think about some of these scenarios.
I'd be happy for him to come and maybe talk a little bit about that at our next meeting. The chief can elaborate beyond what sometimes we need. So I just wouldn't want it to become a 30-minute segment, but if you wanted to talk a little bit about some of his thoughts on that, I think that would be helpful.
I'm still struggling with the question before we got off on that tangent of what do we want to see? What's the positive that we're trying to get?
So I like the idea of adding a one-way scenario based on what we just discussed. So I definitely would like to see what that looks like. And I'd like that to be considered if we have a single access road still. If we have a second access road, the second access road would need to be engineered in such a way that it represents the primary ingress and egress. Am I using the right terms there? So that people are not using Bird Street for anything other than local traffic traveling to down.
Let me just bring up one way, maybe just, if we go in that direction, we probably also have to work with the churches and the library. There's 2 churches there. Of course, that's only once a week probably, but that's their parking on the Episcopal Church and the Presbyterian Church. And then of course, I don't know if you lose library spaces, it's limited parking with the library. So parking is a big, an issue for that street.
I'm not seeing any issue with this restricting any of the parking.
Okay. Oh, okay, good.
Because if you're making it one way at Bird Street, then you can then take a certain section of that,
Okay.
sidewalk or additional.
Yeah.
Actual parking, so just like go full width. Right. So I think that actually help.
Is it not reasonable to assume that if this scenario seems to alleviate some that right now is the extreme, but let's say that was the daily basis, would it not seem feasible that it would support July 4th and it would support that ongoing that kind of scenario? Now, it doesn't address July 4th in that scenario, but it seems like, like if they're expecting how many thousand people on 4th of July, and that's way more than people who live here now, then we have that many people on an ongoing basis that would support them.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So in other words,
At least some of the time, we do support that level of traffic.
right.
Right, that's what I'm saying. This
Not
scenario
great.
supports that level.
I would say so. In fact, if anything, I think it would. I mean, this one-way scenario could, in some modified version, actually be helpful in that in some situations. So
That's what Jeff was thinking.
yeah. So
But it also seems like that might potentially be able to resolve some of the issues we have with the VDOT.
yeah, this is true.
Okay. That helps. That's written in action.
So
So if you wanted one statement, you want to have a statement.
Help me, it's kind of a getting to know you for the group as well. Tell me what you would like this to look like. What is your preferred outcome?
So if I can elaborate on what Matt's saying is, instead of saying, I'm concerned about this, I'm concerned about this, I'm concerned about this, instead of presenting concerns, which we've done, which is valid, which we need to do. But maybe now we can present some solutions, some ideas as far as what can we do based on all the concerns we've discussed that Matt can use to implement, changes in the document. Is that kind of along what you're saying? So, yeah, so solution is time.
Well, let's not call them traffic scenarios.
No. This is a little vision.
There's something more positive.
Jim, I think what you were saying, I think actionable steps are, because you've already been pondering this way before I even heard anything about it. And it seems to be lingering, without movement. So I think what you're saying about making actionable steps of reaching out to VDOT first, and then deciding about the community, and in the interim, and not, sometimes, it's like with my kids, well, they're term now, but, you know, I had to break things down into small pieces. If I look at the big picture, it's overwhelming, you know, and this is a very overwhelming task. And so, and like I do project management. So in project management, I'll often have like small-term, short-term goals, but I'm still working on the long-term goals in the background. So we're doing action steps until the next meeting, and then the next meeting set the next action steps based on the input that we get. And then in the meantime, we can also investigate, is this one-way scenario that solve some of the problems that we would have with funding and approvals and zoning and all those other things, so that these things can be developed without too much of an issue, because again, if they remove that building, that's additional parking to you.
Right. Well, I think that's a good point, which is that a lot of these thoughts that we're having are specific to what's kind of best for the town, but also in a sense, some of these things may need to be done whether the town wanted it or cared about it or not, in order to make some, you know, any sort of plan that was feasible. So I think there's multiple benefits to that.
Are you asking us to say what we think should be done to the property? Yes. So just go around the room. What do you want, Jane? What do you want?
Yeah. Well, so
what
I was actually going to do is, Peter and Shannon have not really weighed in a whole lot. I'd like to hear something from both of you.
Shannon, you want to go? All right, I'd be happy to. That's fine. I think the plan in its long-term view of the development of the plant, some form of housing is essentially on target. I think what's missing are all the stuff we talked tonight about what's permissible or not in access and egress solutions that would be compatible with the town's culture. And so Lindsay called it in the first 15 minutes, I think. We have to determine whether that second access road can allow a bigger vision or you stay within a small envelope. My personal preference would be that the plant be developed, and if there's a restriction, it's a restriction to what goes out outside it, and we maintain the green space and the open space. The plant left alone would be horrible. Maybe the only thing worse would be we do housing on the hill and nothing with the plant and don't solve it.
Well, and then you run into a potential issue where the building becomes unusable, and then you end up just having a building that has to be done, which is
exactly. We need development of the plant in a responsible way within the construct of what's allowable for traffic, either one road or two. So I think you already did the homework. We need to find out the answer about the second road plan. Otherwise, it's a fool's errand.
Sure.
And that's actionable and time sensitive and trying to respect the town council's desire for action. What I did learn tonight, probably because of the comment, is the plan as it's currently written should not be active because it doesn't speak to this issue. So the rush to get through this, to get on an agenda, I don't understand if we know that without a second road it doesn't work, or not, it's not permissible. Got to solve that first.
So we could, as an actionable point, we could just say that what gets included in the plan is just a statement that says if housing development exceeds 50 dwelling units, there must be a guaranteed second access. Simple statement.
That wants to know what you want to have. You have a ferry one, and everything worked well. What would you like to do?
I think certainly a mix of housing and affordable housing so that people who have businesses in town can live in town if they so choose. You know, I don't think that the commute from Scottsville to Charlottesville is any big deal. I used to do it a couple times a day, but then, you know, and in my former life, I commuted 150 miles a day because it was worth getting out to the Blue Ridge Mountains, but a lot of people might not do that. But so yes, a mix of housing, a mix of something, whether I know that there, Peter, that you've been working on scenarios that there's a real need for medical facilities in this area to serve the larger Scottsville area. I think that makes sense, that urgent care of some sort. I think recreational uses, whether they're outdoors or indoors, makes sense. I think it needs to be, a mix of things. And I think it's perfectly, it would be not difficult to create a greenway scenario that would provide a lot of pedestrian traffic and access to the town, and maybe, an exciting plaza where you would have outdoor eating and festivities and things that didn't clog up Main Street. So I think there's, I'm for a good, exciting mixed use with a second exit.
Okay. I agree. I don't think the commute's a big deal. I think the bigger problem is that there's not enough here for people to make the commute for. Again, and I do. I mean, I've got my hands in a lot of hot stove and have for quite some time. But I see families all the time that go other places because it's convenient to some activity that they're doing with their kids. And I think, and no, it's not all about kids, but you get kids, there's adults who want to do it for their kids, and they bring them. You're also building community and a community atmosphere. I think it's something everybody wants. I'd love to see the green space and the buildings of that, but I think the development and the promotion need to go hand in hand, because I think Scottsville is desperately being talked about, or some meeting I've been to has been talked about before. It's almost like Scottsville needs to end up because Scottsville's picked at this and picked at that and picked at this, but there's no, I've done a lot of marketing and branding, and you can't do that really right because everybody has a different idea of who you are. But until you know who you are, you can't sell them. And I think all this planning that we're doing is great, but if the town isn't being promoted in a way that's building the town, I love this little town. It's great. I've lived in New Orleans and Miami and Virginia Beach, a lot of different places, but I like the community here, and I love it. And so which is why I've been kind of listening and kind of keeping an ear out. But that's one thing I've noticed, especially doing what I do, that there's no cohesion. And again, you can't promote something to other people and draw that traffic in, and draw these people in, when one, you're not really serving the people that live here already and it's in full, because people are going outside to get stuff and get services. So I do think like medical care and activities and some of the services that you guys talked about, and yes, a mix of housing. I think a nice mix of everything. I don't think any one thing is a magic bullet.
So would you say like services, activities, and housing would be kind of your ideal?
Yeah.
Like three things that would.
But I do think that promotion of the city as a whole should be considered in the planning, because how we promote is also going to kind of shape what you're planning. If I decide that I'm going to sell this city as a river town, come hit the river, kayak, canoe, tube, which is an obvious no-brainer. But to do that, you need to spend a little time down the landings.
I'm just gonna interrupt you on that only because I think the comprehensive plan probably addresses that. It's more of a comprehensive. You tell me if that's not true, but I think the small area plan is specific to this area, but the comprehensive plan talks more about the broader.
But what I'm saying is that the small plan and the comprehensive plan should be in tandem.
Sure.
Yes.
So I think it's important to at least consider some of those things when you're considering what your vision is for this space. I think looking at the comprehensive plan is important.
I want to prime your comments with one more thing, because in the property map, if you're starting the conversation with, because you're talking about the river, the Spain property that you're talking about putting the road on also wraps around the factory and goes to the river. Do you think this project would be better if it had a river exit?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, just to get that in there. Yes. It's right there.
It's right there. To me, that seems a no-brainer. And I know people, I spend a lot of time on the river myself, down here. And I know people that live here have problems getting river access. And I met somebody who, I was at the gas station down here. One day I'm going tubing. There's a young couple there, like 20-something years old. They're blowing up the tube they bought at Barefoot with the trying to do it with the tire pump. So I was like, would you like some help with that? Let me help you out. So I'm helping them out. I'm talking to them, where are you from, all this stuff. And come to find out, they had gone to James River Runners and said, hey, where would we buy a tube? And they wouldn't tell them because they wanted them to rent from them. We had problems parking and all this stuff. If we can't solve this problem for the community that we have now, then how are we going to promote it as a river town? And I think that's really one of the bigger selling points. That and the quaintness and the nice small shops and things like that. I think it could be promoted so well. And it's just kind of been all over the place. But I do think it's important for this space to supplement or boost or them to work together to build the town, build what you want as a vision for the town.
So, I mean, you could have a riverfront that is public access, not just for people who live there. That might be something that needs to.
Yeah, let me just say one more thing and I'm going to shut up. That this plan can have both a short-term, immediate action stuff in it, as well as whatever happens at the tire plant is going to be long-term. We are still in the midst of COVID and very uncertain economic times. And so that's looking at the long-term. You could, the area plan can have a whole section on downtown revitalization, because that can happen right now without a bill coming in. And a greenway section.
So I think we're about running out of time, but I'd like to give anybody who hasn't already kind of done their, I guess there's two things that I'm more looking for specific action items in relation to traffic, and Matt's looking for more of a broad vision for what, is the ideal scenario. So if anybody has one or both of those and wants to weigh in, then that'd be good.
I do.
Hey.
Hey. Yeah, I've just been kind of taking in everybody's comments, but one thing that I keep coming back to, and I've said before in previous meetings, is that I do think, I agree with the speaker who just spoke, I didn't catch her name, but we do need to define what we want Scottsville to be. And I think we should be nailing that down first, and then looking at what we really want back there. And it sounds like a mixed use facility where we have some services there. So it could be medical, it could be for kids. What's going to draw people into the town and get them here, spending money and, benefiting our town, in addition to providing housing. I do think that it would be great to have the VDOT road questions answered, because I've been wondering that myself since this whole process started. Has anybody looked at that as a possibility of having a second access point to get in and out, or has that just been totally shut down before in the past? And it sounds like that it hasn't been answered yet. So I think as far as the traffic goes, that would be a really good action item for us to have checked off. Is that feasible? Is that something we can even do? Because that will drive what we're able to do back there, obviously. So yeah, I think it's a combination of having that question, the traffic question answered, and also really coming up with a vision for what we want that ties in with the comprehensive plan of Scottsville.
So
I think once we have, yeah.
Sorry, I want you to continue, but I just want to make one point here. And this is in reference to the question that Matt is asking everyone about what our vision is. I think it's worthwhile to mention what our vision is, but we need to be specific why, because there's already been a lot of discussion as far as what the town would like to see back there. And for our purposes, our goal is to take the information that's already collected and make it a usable document.
Right.
Our purpose is not to shape the vision of this, because we have 12 people here, and we can't do that effectively without a lot of outreach, which has already happened enough to. So I just want to be clear, like if we're gonna speak to a vision, we need to say, and this is why, so that it can support a little bit more of the direction of the document, not so much this is what I'd like to see, and this is what I'd like to see, because we're not taking a poll right now.
In the survey work that we did, far and away, the most consensus was people like rural character in Scottsville. It was the #1 response about what do you like about this area? Clearly, rural character means different things to different people, or else everybody wouldn't agree on it. So I'm trying to figure out what do we mean by that, and what can we make better without messing it up.
And Shannon, I wasn't directing that at you. I was just kind of thinking as everyone.
Sure.
I happen to interrupt you. But,
Yeah. But to go back to Matt's point, has anybody, like, have we talked about just, you know, if we want to keep the rural character of the community, and we also want people to have, who live here, to have riverfront access, you know, that is something that I've heard a lot of people talk about around town, is that we just don't really have any space here in town, because it's all owned either by the railroad or by James River Runners or whomever. Has anybody looked at just, is it feasible to just tear that factory down, make it a green space? Maybe it's a bike park or a skate park or something for kids that, you know, continues the Dorrier Park complex. You know, maybe there's some riverfront access back there, and we just get a developer to put in some housing units on the hill out of the floodplain. So we have green space where we can walk our dogs, and, you know, we have access to the river. And has anybody looked at that? Is that completely off the table because it just wouldn't make financial sense for a developer?
I'm going to predict what Matt's about to say, which is that we would need state or federal funding to do something like that.
Somebody's got to pay for it.
Sure.
Which is not a thing, but it would be a process, I think, to find some grant.
But that's good to hear, because we haven't often heard, well, just tear it down. And so if that's something that you really want to air out there, is like, you could do worse for the community than a clean concrete slab with some skate and BMX stuff on it, and a river access and a nice cluster of homes on the hill, and you think that would not be apocalyptic. Okay.
Well, I mean, somebody might be willing to come in there and scrap all the metal and
sure.
Right.
The rest of the stuff. I mean, who knows? I mean, you don't know.
Do you guys mind if I make a suggestion, since we are going 2 hours on this meeting and we were supposed to be talking about traffic, and since we do have a limited time moving forward to make all of these changes and get them to town council, would we be able to put on this agenda, just maybe we can take one of these topics and make that the next topic for next week or the week thereafter. I mean, I had some notes of, you know, we should have a specific meeting about housing. We should have a specific meeting about nature and green space, zoning, historic preservation. However, before we get to any of those, it really still is dependent on the second access point. So I think for this meeting, and really what we're looking to move forward here with, is just the answer to that question, which then will dictate everything else. You know, we're still kind of going on in circles here about what the potential for this area is, but I think that traffic, that second access point, really is the main dictator of how we move forward. And once we have that answer, prior to the next group meeting, we should, I mean, my thought is we should just lead in with, this is the answer on the traffic question, and then how does then that relate to whatever the next topic is, whether, you know, and housing, commercial, residential, and really kind of coming up with more of an idea of what this area then becomes.
So do you see a natural segue then to this traffic conversation? And based on what Matt's going to research, is there a segue that you'd like to see for next meeting?
I mean, I really would just love the answer to that question. And then once we have that answer, you know, and Matt, I'm happy to go through this with you and you know, tear some of the stuff out of the traffic scenarios and help remarket all of this however we think makes the most sense. But I mean, again, from an hour ago, we could say if there's no second access point, then some of these scenarios as they're currently listed are not going to work. So if those don't work, then we know we can move on to the next thing.
So,
I think while we have a time frame for town council, I think we should all consider a time frame for our own personal schedules during the week while we're doing these. So these are all things that we need to discuss, but let's keep these meetings segmented to the topics so we can just push them along and nobody's here until midnight. Last thing that I want is to, repeat the Charlottesville Town Council and be on here for 8 hours. I'm sure nobody wants that. But that's my opinion. That's my suggestion moving forward. So that the answer to that question is a pretty heavy one, and will direct us on where to move to next. And as we get more information, we can also start marking up the changes to the small area plan and really just keep it all moving along.
okay. So then do we need to pick a topic for next week's meeting now?
Yes, I think we should.
So that, I guess that was my question, is do you see a topic that follows this one in sort of a natural sequence?
Sure. I mean, I really think housing and commercial / residential, or whatever goes is the next topic.
The housing questions about how much, what kind, who builds it, price.
Yes.
Right, I love it. I think we're talking specifically as relates to the factory.
I'm sorry, by housing, I mean apartments.
Yeah. Well, we're hoping to have an answer on that because Matt's going to talk to VDOT and talk to the property owner and find out what the situation is. So we're hoping that we can have some clarity so that when we go to discuss the scenario, whatever it is in there, that we know what's feasible.
I will bang on the door of the Charlottesville VDOT office until they give me this answer.
Yeah, don't do that at the property owner.
And then I think the other thing that we should put down here is the timing and the date for the next meeting. Is it in 2 weeks? Is it September 1st?
So I'm glad you bring that up. I'd like to do two things. First of all, I'd like to ask if anyone in the room has an issue with 6 o'clock instead of 7. I know some people do on town council and planning, but I would prefer 6 o'clock.
That's good with me.
Good. Everybody's good? Yep. Okay, so let's do 6 o'clock. I'd like to set a time limit, and I want to make sure that we're productive, and I think a time limit kind of forces us to stay on target. It also keeps people from getting overwhelmed and not wanting to participate because they don't know when they're going to get to go home.
If you do September 8th, that would be your normal planning commission meeting day. You could hit it for a solid hour at 6 p.m. and then just do your regular business.
I don't want that. I don't want that kind of constraint, and I'd like to have time to do something with whatever we discuss.
Okay, sure.
So let me look at the calendar here and see. So today being, what is today? The 18th. I'm okay with the 1st. Oh no, we don't want to do it Tuesday because I do want Karen to be here. She's planning commission for the county, which I think she needs to be involved in this. I think she's going to have some good feedback. Does anybody have an issue with Wednesday? Is there something on Wednesday, the 2nd?
My birthday, but
oh, that's
there's nowhere I'd rather be.
What better way to celebrate it? That you'll have an excuse to bring beer to the meeting.
But if we're going to try to get maybe some outside thoughts about it, it's going to take more than the 2 weeks, maybe, to get some other outside people to. It depends on how much more research we need to get.
When you say 2 weeks, you mean 2 weeks before? You're saying make our next meeting 3 weeks out?
No. I'm saying the following, like Wednesday the 16th, something like that.
We picked that day for some reason.
We did pick that day for some reason. Well, there was a Labor Day weekend in there at some point.
It's after,
Labor Day weekend.
oh, no, it was because you wanted town council to have the reaction to what we've done so far, talk with them about timing one more time and then follow up. Because either, if we met on the 16th, we would have the feedback from council, either, okay, we got to get this done right now, or else we can push it out.
Well, all right, well,
Because
no,
we
let's
know
not,
this.
let's not do that. If we're working with November or October, then let's not.
If everybody's okay with doing 2 weeks, I want to discuss which day we do the week of the 30th through the 5th of September.
Thursday, the 3rd is Architectural Review Board. We've
Okay.
done joint meetings with them before. It might be nice to hear from ARB about how they feel about the style of housing. It's outside historic district, but maybe we have an opinion about historic.
What time is their meeting?
They're at 7.
I feel like that's a separate conversation, and first maybe we figure out what type of housing we're looking at, no?
I wouldn't mind doing that at some point, but I think maybe
Yeah, for sure.
I think we need to get a little, I think we need to, you know, learn how to walk here before we go.
Tuesday the 1st then.
I really want Karen to be here.
Oh, right, yeah, that's right.
So what about the 31st? That's going to be town.
Nothing on that, nothing on the 31st.
Oh, because it's the last week. Oh, so can we do the 31st?
Monday.
It's a Monday, but it's the 5th Monday, so there's no meetings. Everybody's okay with that?
I like that.
Shannon?
Which date, which Monday?
The 31st
First?
of August.
Oh,
That's it.
I will be out of town that day, but don't let that stop you guys.
Josh will be back. Thank you.
So we'll have Lindsay, myself. I'd like to make sure we have at least one more. So I'm assuming either Josh or Lisa will be able to participate.
Lisa's interested. She probably had family stuff here today.
Right. Okay. Okay, Shannon, I appreciate you being willing to concede that, because I think that 31st is really probably the ideal. Okay, so can we add an item to the agenda for this coming meeting, which is planning the following meeting? So we kind of think in our heads, we've got to make time for this conversation. And let's limit this to two hours and max. We can wrap it up soon. It'd be great, but no more than 2 hours. Let's keep. I'm gonna go a little battle axe on the schedule, because I'd rather cut up the conversation and hurt someone's feelings, but keep this on schedule than have people get discouraged because the meetings go on and on and on and on. So just be aware that I might say, okay, we need to stop talking about that and move on to the next thing. So nobody gets their feelings hurt.
So Monday, the 31st is going to be
Housing.
Or commercial/residential splits, whatever, something like that.
Yeah. So I think it's not housing. It's
The mix of uses.
yeah scenario. I guess maybe, I don't know. I think we all know what we're talking about here. Okay. So we've got our next meeting for the 31st at 6 p.m. here. We're going to be talking about housing. We're going to get some updates from Matt as they come in. You'll let us know if you hear from them.
Absolutely.
And then we're going to need to post another update so that, because we're going to have, it's obviously a meeting with planning commission involved. So we're going to post that.
Yes. That's fine.
I'd like everybody to think about ways to engage the public. So I posted on Facebook yesterday, which is a little short notice for a lot of people, and I think it was a little verbose, so I don't think a lot of people read it, but I'd like to encourage people to come and participate. I'm also going to strictly enforce public participation for a short segment at the beginning of the meeting, maybe 20 minutes from when it starts to when it finishes, depending on how, up to 20 minutes. And then we're not going to have anything after that unless you're a permanent member of the committee. But I really do want to engage people to come to these meetings and sit in on it. I think it would be valuable. So think about ways to engage folks.
Get it on the Chamber's website, Scottsville.
What about having something posted at the farmer's market about town events and council meetings and such?
Yeah, I'd like to do two things. First of all, I'd like to give feedback to Matt. So just maybe, but also think about things that we can do ourselves as well. Matt's taking, on a lot with this meetings. I don't want to overload him with like, oh, Matt, can you do this and do this? So I think it's good to give him some ideas, but I think we also need to think about things that we can do ourselves. So just take that for what it's worth. Okay, so I think we're good. We're gonna adjourn. Thank you,
Yep.
everybody. We'll see.
Yeah, thank you. I think this was really helpful.
Good night,
Thank you all
everyone.
very much.
Thank you.
9:17 adjourned. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom.
Good night.
See you guys later.